This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony, air quotes, Nippy, Ames.
And this is A Little Bit Culty, a podcast about what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real cult stories told directly by the people who lived through them.
Because we want you to learn a few things we've had to learn the hard way.
Like, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you're already prime recruitment material.
You might even already be in a cult.
Oops. You better keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Season 6 of A Little Bit Culty. Hey everybody, the episode that follows was originally aired for our Patreon audience, but we wanted to share it this week with everyone far and wide. It's a sit down with Lucy Taylor to talk about campus hazing cases that could really make your hair stand on end. Give it a listen and let us know what you think. It's sort of a part 3 with Lucy Taylor. 1 was a few seasons ago and 2 was last week. Make sure you listen to those first.
And if you're interested in more ALBC content, join us over on Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty. And here's some breaking culty news. We have changed our tiers to make our episodes more accessible to everyone, so you can get all 4 of our bonus drops every month starting at just $5 per month. We don't want cult fighting bonus content to be cult levels of pricey. So spot us a $5 every month, cup of coffee, and you'll get our bonus drops and access to other exclusive content. It's like a book club for cult awareness nerds. Join us.
In a non-culty way.
Of course.
Enjoy part 3, sort of, with Lucy Taylor. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's Patreon special bonus extravaganza with Lucy Taylor from the Snapped podcast.
Was it really an extravaganza, Sarah? I mean,
it's an extravaganza.
Okay. All right.
It's got to be. Also, as you all know here, I was trying to do this last week. Nippy ordered bed rest because I had a very bad case of laryngitis. I'm back in action, and we have decided to answer your questions that you posted and have a conversation about where Lucy is now. And we also decided to do a longer episode for the main feed coming shortly. But today's episode will focus on a very special week, which we'll get into. But first of all, Lucy, how are you since we had you on our podcast?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long. I don't even know how I've been. I feel like I've just been go, making this season in hyper-focus. It's been hard for me to really reflect about how I've been and like take a moment to just appreciate where I am.
Let's take that moment.
Yeah. It's needed.
You've been working really hard since Snap came out, and I have been following your journey on social and through the podcast, and a lot has happened.
You've done a great job.
And our listeners,
thank you.
Yes,
so far.
Thank you.
And it's very impressive that you've also done so much of it yourself. You know, like a real one-woman show. I know you've had a lot of support too, but you've really been the driver, and also you've been unfunded, correct? Or do you have sponsors now?
So we have one sponsor. It was kind of a shenanigan to get. It was like this whole back and forth, but then eventually I locked it down. And then I tried doing like affiliate sponsors, but that really hasn't worked out too well. But yeah, it's pretty unfunded. I mean, it's kind of funded because I have one sponsor, but you know.
Does it cover everything?
No. But it's still been great. I feel like I've learned so many skills because I've had to do so much of it myself.
Right.
That now I just have all these skills and like a portfolio to show for it. And I can just take that with me to wherever I go next.
Yeah, it'll open
right.
It'll
Which
open
we'll
up
get
something
to.
else for sure. I think what I told you, I think in our last episode is like, I think there's a series here or a book
Yeah,
or something
you said
like that.
HBO
Yeah, I think there's
something.
something there because it's unfortunately it's not ending, right? So
Right.
Well, that was actually one of the questions is there's been a lot of not scripted series, but documentary series and movies and stuff on various platforms. We haven't watched them all. I'm sure you have. How do those shows represent what's actually going on? Are you happy with them? Are you dissatisfied? Where do you sit?
So the only one that I've seen is Bama Rush. I don't know of any others that recently have come out. Bama Rush, I was not too pleased by. I think they didn't really have a story. They just wanted to capitalize off of the hype that Bama Rush was bringing to TikTok. And
Which is what, for those who don't know?
Yeah, so Bama Rush on TikTok is this whole thing where the sororities, like the PNMs, the potential new members, will make TikToks being like, this is my outfit of the day for Rush Day #1 or blah, blah, blah. And then the TikTok viewers would follow along on their Rush experience and see if they ended up getting into the sorority that they wanted and, you know, who got into the top tiers and whatnot. To be honest, I wasn't really watching Bama Rush because I have to really be careful with what sorority content I consume or else I'm just over it and like can't hear anymore. But I think that HBO saw a good opportunity, but they didn't have an in to get any real information about what was going on behind the scenes. And it was more so just like a lot of filler. It felt like the majority of it was filler.
The trailer seemed to me to have kind of a Real Housewives feel to it, as opposed to seeking to understand what the abuses may have been and capitalizing on that. That was my take on it. And just for our listeners, just so you know, you could probably just find the trailer anywhere to get a sense of what it's about. That was my initial impression.
Right. Yeah. I think also the director that they put on it didn't really know much about Greek life, and the comments she was making was like, I could tell that she didn't really know much about Greek life because she was saying things like, oh, well, they do, you know, philanthropy and stuff. And, you know, if she had really known a lot about sororities and fraternities, she would know that they are fake philanthropies and that it's just a front and that they're not, it's not about actual community work. It's just, look, we have a philanthropy. This is great for our PR. Let's have a frat like activity.
Got it. It's like Scientology saying they're helping the world with world hunger or like literacy.
Well, the people like, so when we met with the HBO team, I think it was Nancy Abrams and Lauren Heller. They produce most of the content for the HBO docs. And even the ones I watched on airplanes, HBO docs, like they are done extremely well. Like even subject matter that I wouldn't have that I know and wouldn't have expected them to know, like sports stuff. There was one on Willie Mays and I saw their names at the end of it. I was like, good God, these two are on it. And I met with them at the trial with Keith. And it was kind of like when I was hemming and hawing about whether or not I wanted to be in a documentary or not. And I said, listen, I'm here to protect my family. Like that's the only reason I would do something like this. And they were pretty responsible with it. So I'd be curious to see if they were a part of this. And you could I'll Google it and find out.
Yeah, I'd be curious too.
And sounds like probably not, but given, but
it's their department.
We'll have to look it up.
So I don't know how, I don't know the bureaucracy and how that works, but.
Or even if they're still there, because that was a couple of years ago.
Anyway.
Okay, so since we had you here last on season 1, you were now on season 3, correct?
I think I was on season 2 and now I'm on season 3. So we were focusing on recruitment for season 2. And then season 3 has now been a whole plethora of topics.
Tell our listeners what season 3 has so they can get caught up.
Totally. So season 3 starts off in sorority world. We just finished the recruitment process in season 2. So now we're going into it and trying to figure out, okay, what happens next once they are in the sorority and are a pledge. And so it starts off in the first 2 episodes of Sorority World. It gives you insight into what these women are dealing with essentially and how it's just this really weird world of like, be a lady, but also fuck these frat guys and like don't drink, but go to the social and chug this wine bag. So it really captures that aspect of sorority life. And then we go to away weekend, which is like this, it genuinely is a binge drinking extravaganza where they just go off to a house in the Poconos or Lord knows where and have a binge drinking extravaganza with the frat. And like the frat brings a sorority girl and there's lots of pressure to hook up with them. And so we see two examples of how this goes wrong. One person I interviewed didn't want to hook up with her date. And so she was drinking the entire time and then ended up going to the hospital. And then the second person I interviewed, she was, trigger warning, rape, going to be talking about rape. She was gang raped by the fraternity men, which is actually very common in fraternity world. But it's very normalized. Like when it happened to her, her friends were like, oh, like you don't remember? Like you had a threesome. And I'm like, not really. And she was drugged. And that's another topic that we discuss because the frat guys think it's funny to like drug each other's drinks and it's just so normalized and it's a whole thing. That's episode 3 of the season. And then we talk about reform. And, you know, there's been so many people who have genuinely tried to reform these systems, like with the best of intentions, thinking they're the ones that are making the change. And so I speak with some of these people, advisors and people who tried to change it at the local level as current members, and they discuss the reforms that have happened or have not happened and how it's all like simulated reform to make it seem like change is happening, but it's really not. Like, for example, we talk about the position of diversity chair that they created mainly in 2020 after there was, all the protests were going on and they were like, oh no, are we going to lose our Gen Z target audience? Because, maybe they'll realize that sororities are racist. And so they're like, okay, let's make a diversity chair position. And then I interview people who were diversity chairs and how it turned out that the position was actually one that held no power and was just there to be there.
Like a virtue signaling chair.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And then episode 5 is called Follow the Money, where we
I listened to that one.
Oh, you did? Awesome.
Yes, yeah.
So in that one, we follow the money and see where it goes. And it is...
That blew me away. That was crazy.
Yeah. It is quite
crazy.
The adventure. Like, that was definitely the episode that I spent the most time researching for. And it took me a while to actually understand where the money was going. I don't want to spoil it, but it's not looking good.
Yeah. There was a lot of like, oh, we don't actually know what that's for. Oh, I'm not actually sure.
Right.
But why do you need this and this? It's like sort of like this both for furniture? Like,
right.
where is it all going? Yeah, and if you got to listen to that, you'll be quite riled up. But not as riled up as we were from episodes
6 and 7.
6 and 7 that drop last week and this week.
Correct.
Because this episode with us, you and I, us 3 will be dropping this Thursday. And because this is the anti-hazing awareness week.
I think it's a hazing prevention week.
Okay.
I get
hazing
confused
prevention
too.
week. Okay. You would know better than us. But this is why we wanted to have you on this week, because we'd like to bring some awareness as well. Yes. As we talked about in our first episode with you, the abuses of power are not lost on us. You don't even have to call it a cult or culty. It's just, this is a very toxic atmosphere.
Question, just a curiosity. And it's not an attempt to minimize what actually goes on in these things. But if you take alcohol out of the equation, a lot of this, how much do you think this abusive stuff curtails and goes down a lot?
I think for the fraternities, the alcohol is definitely what leads to more death, even though it can happen without alcohol too. For the sororities, I don't think it... I mean, it matters in the sense that when you go to the fraternity parties, it's all binge drinking, but I don't know. I think it's more so about America's drinking age. I think that if America's drinking age was 18 and not 21, there wouldn't be this this binge drinking pressure and this like secrecy of like, we need to have a pregame so that we can already get blacked out there and then go to the post game and blah, blah, blah. Like,
I hadn't actually made that connection.
yeah.
I didn't realize like, okay, duh, because it's not 21 in Canada.
Right.
That is such a silly missing piece that I hadn't
you have
quite
to
put
go
together.
underground with all your like, you pre-game in a room. Like, no, I remember those social settings, and I just know that, look, you take young, especially males. Like, I mean, I don't want to pick on men on this, but like, I know enough being in like jock culture in college and all that stuff to know that like, if you get a bunch of men together that are drinking and they're not supposed to be, and it's just, all my bad decisions in my life, and I've had about 3 or 4 incidents, none of them didn't involve alcohol. They were just all like me being kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, but also drinking with a bunch of people. And it gets kind of brushed under the carpet as boys will be boys. You're blowing off steam, and you have older men who remember being that age and going, yeah, they're just doing this, and it gets dismissed. And really it sets the precedence for some people. Like when I was drinking, when I did the whole thing, I remember thinking, this is the only time in my life I'm ever going to do this. There was nothing like even alcohol in my life today. It's just not something I particularly enjoyed. My body handles well. Now maybe I'm lucky for that or whatever reason. It just didn't work well with me. I didn't get up feeling good about it, but other people can just keep doing it, and I couldn't. And I think it sets the precedent for bad behaviors going forward. So I just hear all these things, and all of them involve alcohol. And that isn't meant to dismiss the story from episode 7, how people handled it, how people were out for their own hides, how no one really stepped up and took responsibility and all that stuff. I just think of alcohol. Anyway, that was kind of my question to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think it has an impact. And I mean, frats are the ones that control the underage drinking scene. Like if you want to drink, you're going to the frat at most schools.
Yep.
And so I definitely think it has a huge impact. And I wish that there wasn't this pressure to go, drink, because you might get caught or your RA can't see or whatnot. I think it would be a lot more relaxed if we could just drink casually.
I agree.
And if something happens, it's not such a big deal to say we were drinking.
Right, because so we don't want to give away the episodes. I think it's really important people listen to the episode that will have dropped by the time this drops. Can you recap it without giving it away so people know what to expect, and also give them the trigger warning necessary? Because it isn't probably one of the most upsetting, heartbreaking things I've ever listened to in a podcast ever.
Yeah, totally. So I would say the trigger warning is just like negligence and just pure disregard for human life. It's really hard to wrap your head around what happens in the episode, but some of you listeners may know the story already of Tim Piazza at Penn State and how he was killed essentially from an injury that, well, I don't know. I would say he was killed by the negligence. He could have been okay from the injury if he had gotten help. But yeah, it's a horrific story. And there's a lot behind the scenes too, because this was supposed to be like, this was Penn State's model fraternity. They had a live-in advisor, they had cameras, like they were literally won Penn State's like chapter of the year before. And so it's very interesting to see how the university handles the situation and how it just all plays out with the cover up initially of, not calling for help, to then the cover up of, no one really saw consequences, and Penn State kind of just pushed it under the rug as they do.
This podcast wouldn't happen without our amazing, supportive, generous patrons. Are you with us? Come find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. It's a lot of fun over there, people.
The Frankies were a picture-perfect influencer family, but everything wasn't as it seemed. I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here asking for help. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. Ruby Frankie is his mom's name.
Infamous is covering Ruby Frankie, the world of Mormonism, and a secret therapy group that ruined lives. Listen to Infamous wherever you get your podcasts.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one. That is actually one of my questions. Since recording the episode and now, still nobody has faced consequences?
No.
Oh, it's so hard. The story itself is so heartbreaking, especially like as a mother and picturing like my son going through any of that or any, just as a human as well. And just being so irate at how it was handled completely. And so much because they were afraid to get in trouble.
Right.
Because of the drinking.
Didn't even get in trouble, which is
I know.
But
I was like, oh, at least it's captured on camera and it's all there, so they'll be held accountable at least. But no, they haven't been held accountable.
No, and you can imagine that what happens when there isn't camera evidence.
That's what I
there's
was telling Sarah. It's like how many of these things have happened historically, without camera evidence.
Yeah, and the brothers won't say what happened. Like at Clemson University, there was a hazing death, and I believe there were 28 brothers there that saw him die or knew exactly what happened, and they won't talk to this day. There's like $100,000 reward for anyone who will say what happened because it's organized crime. Like it's such a mob mentality that to this day, like they won't say what happened. And it's a whole thing. And it was completely just pushed under the rug because like the governor's son was one of the guys. And so that's what
Do you think they were paid off?
I don't know. I don't know. But the common theme in these hazing deaths is that the perpetrators are coming from very wealthy, powerful families. And it just is swept under the rug.
That's what stood out to me as well, is that just like you follow the money, when you follow the power and who's in control, that even if it does get to the judicial system, because it's such a network of old boys club type of relationship, many of whom were even in the fraternity that are protecting the other. It's like men protecting boys.
Totally.
Because of the bond of the fraternity, which is really hard for me to have my head around because I don't have that. Like I can't, but that's like, it's like Illuminati shit, in some ways. It's like,
absolutely.
It's like next level secret society and things going on. Like
they're protected by everyone.
House of Cards,
the government. And it's hard because when I was making these episodes, the hazing episodes specifically, I would think to myself, like, who is liable? Because the hazers are also victims because they were hazed and, the advisor, the live-in advisor was encouraging this behavior.
It's the culture. Yeah.
It's the culture, right. And so I don't think all the blame should be on the hazers. I really think the conclusion that I've come to is that I think most of the blame should be on the fraternity and the school.
Think about it. But we have an education institute, right? A university that knows and condones an abusive culture. And these are our education institutes. These are people that are supposed to put people out into the world and have a societal function. And they know that this stuff goes on. And it's an antiquated model at best. And they don't do anything about it because it's probably part of the university's lure. Some people go to the university because, I want to have this fraternity life. And the responsibility of the university is to educate. And what does it say about our education systems when they're not educating and in fact they're fostering more abusive people? So that's a hard pill for them to swallow, and it goes against their brand. These state universities, their fraternities are part of their lure, So I agree. I think that, I'm not dismissing 19, 20-year-old kids who are all of a sudden thrust into a situation of, hey, I went out to a party and I found myself in a situation. Do I call 911 when I don't know the kid's drunk or whatever? I think that's a tough situation for those kids to be in. And then all of a sudden have a friend or someone die. Like, it's rare that you're going to see someone step up and do the right thing. And although they should, the universities have an atmosphere where you drop your kid off, and either way, they're faced with that set of circumstances. And if it keeps happening, I think the universities have to step in and set a precedent.
Yeah, I agree. And then we see in the episode that one person who wanted to call for help,
who was such a brave badass, and I please pass on my regards to him. I was like, what tough. A good guy. What happened with him?
Yeah, I mean, but we just see how the person that genuinely could have been the person to call for help couldn't, because of the systems that they have, where, he wasn't on the executive board. He was a newly initiated member. Like, it's a different world. Like,
yeah, he didn't have the power to make the decision.
Right.
And isn't there also video footage of him trying to say something and then somebody pushes him against a wall?
Yeah.
Like, I probably would have done the same thing. I don't know if I would have done differently.
Right.
What, push someone against the wall?
No, I mean, backed off. Like, if I'm not in a position of power in this hierarchy, and I'm like, and I'm trying to do the right thing, and then they're like, no, we got it. I'm like, okay, well, you know better. I did what I said my concerns. Right. I mean, I'd like to think I'd be the person to call 911. I'm just saying I can understand how in that structure you wouldn't.
Either way, it's a horrible situation.
Oh, I feel nauseous. It's nauseating.
Yeah. So as parents, could you see yourself when the college process comes? How would you go about it with the schools that have Greek life? Like, would you let your kids apply? I'm
really working on not controlling and my children, but I would do my best to educate him so he could make an informed decision. Yeah, and I'd be very upset, obviously.
Here's what I would tell him, and this was my situation in college. I got, recruited by this fraternity that was mostly a bunch of the guys on the football wrestling team, and I just didn't want to go into a situation where people were going to be treating me like shit. And I didn't want to live with the same kind of guys that I hung out with all the time. And I think you go to college to experience a lot of different people. If you get in a fraternity or something like that, you're going to make it a narrow experience. And if you like being treated like shit and you like treating other people like shit to be a part of something, then go for it. But I didn't like it, and I wasn't going to be treated like that, and I didn't need to do that, and it didn't seem like fun to me. And I think if he still wants to do it after that, then I don't know if I'm going to stop him. But I'll give him your podcast to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. What I've learned is that we don't say, no, you can't do this. We say, here's why we didn't. Here's why we wouldn't. And we try to educate, because I feel like when you give kids rules without the why behind it, it makes them, especially when kids are individuating. And I know this happened to me. Like, people are like, oh, I wouldn't take that training. That looks really expensive. I'm like, well, you don't know shit because you don't understand. Right. Like there's a real defiance that occurs when kids individuate. So I'm hesitant to set a rule about it, but I would definitely do whatever I could to educate. Just like I'll, educate him about drinking and drugs. And
educate him on drinking first.
Which we've already kind of started, even though he's 9.
Would you pay though? Would you pay the dues?
No.
So you would say you have to pay the dues.
Yeah, I said I'm not participating. I would say I'm not participating in that.
Right.
I would find it very wild if Troy did that, only because like some of the things that we're pretty adamant about, like we don't do a lot of sugar, we don't do video games. Troy's like, I don't play video games. Like, and I've shared, he's like, I just don't do it. It's like I've got better things to do. Life is out here. All of his friends are into Nintendo Switch, and he's like, I don't do that. So I feel I'm not worried. Yeah, I feel like, and sometimes he'll be like, "Oh, Mom, I got a football game tomorrow. I probably shouldn't have this dessert." And I was like, "That's a good call, Troy."
Yeah.
Like we try to lead by example as best as we can, and not be controlling, rule-bound parents because we know how that goes.
Right.
I feel good about us as parents, and I'm not worried about it. But yeah, like I would show him documentaries. I mean, we've been trying to keep it age appropriate, but educating about all these things. I mean, he knows what a cult is.
Hell yeah.
He knows, he knows that Keith is behind bars, and he knows we've talked. He knows what manipulation is, even to the point where he's like, "Mom, you're being manipulative, and don't force me to do something I don't want to do." I'm like, "You're right. You're right. I'm being coercive, trying to get you to go to the street fair with me this Sunday." Fuck, he calls me on it. So like, it's good, and I have to own it. I'm like, "You're right. I was trying to force you to do something you didn't want to do, and I apologize. I won't. I'm going by myself."
Yeah.
So we're trying to be as best parents as we can. Do you mind if I switch gears into the questions from our Patreon?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Allie Y says, this is a conversation I've been curious about since I started following the pod. As someone who pledged through a H program, Hellenic, is that what it means?
What does it say?
I thought that.
H?
It says an H star program.
H star.
An H. There's like a little asterisk.
Don't know.
Hellenic, maybe?
Panhellenic, maybe.
Okay, so someone who pledged through a program, H program, and later to fight for alumni support as I and others led new classes into my sorority with a more empathetic approach to team building. I'd love to hear Lucy's thoughts on whether older sisters would want to push back on modifying pledge programs and how to set up and continue to have conversations with active and alumni sisters to move away from the trauma bonding model and instead create a more safe environment to actually learn from the history of the organization, share values, and form a genuine support network.
Yeah, totally. It's hard because I think the trauma bonding model is part of the model. And I don't know if the ones at the top, the national organization, if they really are that dark in the way that like they intentionally know that. And they're like, no, we got to like keep the hazing, keep the fear, because I think that is part of what gets people to stay and what gets people to continue paying dues. So I really don't know if it is that dark at the top, but I do know that the national organizations don't want to change and that I know Alpha Phi, for example, the top of their organization created the Alpha Phi recruitment strategy, which is like, it was talked about in the season 2 recruitment special, but it's basically just a very racist recruitment strategy that gets all the white, blonde, skinny girls. And they do it very kind of insidiously. But I don't know. I think they don't want it because I don't know. I can't really say what they're saying at the top, but I know that they don't want to change.
Right.
For more background on what brought us here, check out Sarah's page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. If you want to see that story in streaming form, watch both seasons of The Vow on HBO.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
And you don't think that there's really room for change. Your sort of approach is like, it's all got to go, right?
Right. Because we see in episode 4, the diversity chair, all of these people who have been trying to reform the system for years. And it's like, if something like hazing wasn't integral to the model, it would have been over already. You know, like the amount of people that have died, the amount of people that have been traumatized, like it would have been gone already. There's a reason why it's still the same. And there's
one death.
Well, you can't have obedience. You can't have obedience without it. Like you can't have what the hazing elicits, which is like those who can't cut it. It's like us with rules and rituals. Like people don't like the sashes got their money back on day one. Like rules and rituals was NXIVM's hazing, right? It weeded out the people that weren't going to cut it. And this is the same thing. It's like you're agreeing to go through this hazing, which everyone knows it's just hazing. Like that's just part of the thing, right? But if you can't hack it, you're not going to go to the next level. So you have to figure out how to hack it. You have to figure out how to be obedient.
Well, there's also the component of you look at how companies handle, let's say you have a toaster that blows up and kills one person. That toaster is recalled.
Gone.
It's off the market the next day because it's bad for business.
Mm-hmm.
If someone goes in and gets hazed, right, and they die, the hazing is part of the product, right? That's what people sign up for. And they're not willing to admit that that's a poor model. They're not willing to take responsibility for it. It means a major inconvenience for these universities and these fraternities to go and do that. Because if one person dies on your campus from hazing, that ought to be the end of it, right? You know, cars recall cars, thousands of them. If there's a model that has like, you know, the brake stuck, get it out right now. That should be the same reaction the universities have with someone dying from drinking too much alcohol and falling down the stairs. I mean, it ought to be, especially if you're spending, you know, however much to send your kid to a school there. So I don't know. I'm with you on that. And I remember after our first interview, I was hemming and hawing or like, should you get rid of Greek life? Maybe it's not that bad. Some people come in and have great connections for life. You can have those connections for life without hazing people. And if you need the hazing to bond you, then you might want to reevaluate how you create relationships. I don't know. That's kind of my take.
That is true. The last episode about the victim, Tim
Piazza, like that. End of it.
That's the end of it. That sealed the deal for me too. And you know what I really hope for you with this is that someone listens to it, turns it into something like get you onto Wondery or iHeart or maybe even a documentary series where they take journalists, you know, not that you're not a real journalist, but like someone who's trained as a journalist and takes it to another level with you being a part of it, you being the narrator because it's your story and you're the one who's been championing this and had the balls to champion it or whatever you want to say. Someone's going to give me shit for saying balls. You know what I mean? The chutzpah, because not many people do. And I really would love for it to get exposure on a big scale and for it like to have this have national coverage and really be under a microscope in a serious way. That's what I wish for you.
Me too. I wish that
someone needs to be outraged.
Yeah.
They need to be more outraged. I mean, you're outraged, but like part of the reason I did what I did with the NXIVM thing is like, hold on a second. They're branding women. Someone needs to come in and get really pissed off and say something and be really obnoxious and loud about it and ring that bell. There needs to be that equivalent in this space because it's not okay. And someone with a little bit of
exactly.
And you are. It's just I just want it to get more. I just want more eyes on it.
Needs a network or something behind
someone
it.
Someone who, with power in that space, goes, hold on a second. Someone died on our watch here, and this is our reaction. What are we doing as an education institute? This isn't what any of us signed up for. This isn't a fraternity. This is a dickhead convention. Sorry. I know.
It is. They
need to talk that way. You need to be a little bit unreasonable about these things. And that's what gets attention. So I don't know. I just hearing that was just like, there's, if my kid went to a fraternity, I don't know, you get it. I don't have to be all worked up about it.
It's good to be worked up about it.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
But inspires change.
I just think, if this stuff's going on and, we're in the deep South where fraternity life is a big thing. And I get, not all of them can be like that and they can be fun and all that, but like, let's check ourselves a little bit.
But they all can be like that.
With on the wrong night. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Sarah Blodgett asked a question, which is basically about, can it be changed or dismantled? I think we answered that already. 2 more questions. Sammy says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Greek life as depicted in TV and movies and how accurate or inaccurate you think it is based on your experience. And other question is, how is the non-Pan-Hellenic IFC groups in terms of their corruption and drama and issues that you're covering? She says she was in a non-Pan-Hellenic sorority, Tau Beta Sigma. I don't know how that's, I don't know any of this. A service sorority focused on the band program. Her husband was in a non-IFC fraternity, can't remember the name, but it was an honors engineering group. And none of these had the drama and issues that were in the same solar system as what you cover in the pod. So she's curious if she's heard about these. Or are they all in like a separate bubble, or is it all the same thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So for the first question about how sororities and fraternities are portrayed, to be honest with you, I don't think they're really portrayed that much. Like, I can think of Animal House, which was a long time ago. House Bunny. I saw it like once. I don't remember what happened in it. I really don't think there is a lot of media, or at least popular media, that depicts these groups. I don't know. Can you guys think of any?
I can't name shows, but I don't have a data bank in my head like Nippy
my
does.
overall impression is they take the cliche impression of it and run with it. Like they'll do something like where they have the typical frat boy slipping something in the drink and joking with his buddies. Tonight's going to be a fun night, and it kind of oversimplifies the culture and makes it about one guy being the creep when it could be. They don't do a good job of showing the ecosystem and the culture that fosters it, and the fact that the university may even sell it. You know, they have fraternity rows at colleges, and they're the nicest houses on campus, right? So that ought to tell you everything you need to know. So
the Beta Theta Pi house was the nicest one, the one where Tim died.
Yeah.
Didn't you say the renovation was $8 million or something like that?
Like, someone needs to put this money elsewhere.
Dorm.
Like, somebody help. Yeah.
Final 2 questions from Leah Johnson. What are the red flags girls should look for during rush? So assuming they decide to do it anyway. And how would you advise someone who finds that they join a toxic sorority to get out?
So I don't think you can, or I don't think they're going to show the red flags during rush, because rush is the whole facade where they're really nice to you and they're just going to kiss your ass the whole time. Like,
which is sort of a red flag if you think about love bombing, right?
You're right. I guess you're right.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is being nice is not necessarily, it is a red flag, but it isn't always necessarily mean love bombing. So how do you know when it's real nice or fake nice?
I think the whole thing is just a red flag. I think the whole thing is a red flag.
Well, and just the fact that you have to compromise yourself and appease these other people to get in a secret club. Like, secret clubs to me were always like, I don't know. I don't want to hang out with it.
Secret clubs secrets are bad. I mean, this is one of the things back to the Troy question. Like, we're trying to teach them, if someone ever says to you, this is a secret, that's come and tell us immediately. Like, there should be no secrets. These secrets always mean there's something being hidden or something bad being kept. Like, there's nothing good about being secret. People like the secret idea because it's like a secret, being a part of a secret club sounds alluring, but why? Like, why is that better than an out in the open club? I don't know.
Yeah.
You feel special. So that's a red flag, feeling special. Like, do you feel better than other people?
Right. Or less than?
Yes, or less than, because you're not part of the thing. Are they making you feel less than or more than? And so love bombing, does it feel authentic, or does it feel, because you could be welcomed into a group that's a real genuine welcome. But that's not necessarily part of the sorority. Basically, you're saying it's all fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if, like, the person that you're having a conversation with, like, you could be having a genuine conversation, but the circumstances involved, like the fact that you have to straighten your hair to go meet and talk to that person, or at least you feel pressured that you have to straighten your hair.
Right. So are you being the authentic you? Do you feel like you have to change yourself to fit in? That's a red flag. Yeah. Do you know, is there a request for lots of money?
Right.
And if you ask where it goes, do you get gaslit or shamed? I'm just throwing it out there based on what I've heard. Yeah. You're probably so in it, you're like, it's all a mess.
Yeah.
Right? It feels like a little bit. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. So what if they find out, okay, I joined a group, I thought it was a good one, turns out it's toxic, I got to get out. What's your advice?
Rule number 1, do not sign the housing contract. Don't live in the house if you can. Those contracts are really strict, but if you can get a school counselor or someone even to just advocate for you that you cannot live in the house, don't live in the house, because that's something that gets you further into the group.
Yes.
And
smart.
Yeah. And I would say disaffiliate in the safest way that you can. If you feel like you need to just, like, if in the moment you need to blame it on yourself, do what makes you feel safe. Like I said, I'm leaving because of my mental health. Like I blamed it on myself. And at that moment, that was the safest thing I felt for me to do. And I don't regret saying that because I got to kind of just like tiptoe away without them bullying me more.
Right.
But say what you need to say and then figure out the truth of the narrative.
Later.
Yeah.
Sick pet, sick relative. That always works, right?
Right.
Nobody can, nobody can contest that. Go be with your relative.
Right.
Right. Those are some good tips. I almost feel like this is for the main feed, but we're going to have you back once the episode's out and do a deeper dive into the cover-up at Penn State, which we hope everyone listens to. And we're almost at an hour, so let's wrap it, unless there's anything else you want our listeners to know.
Don't join.
You and us both. Don't join. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you for your time, Lucy. Keep it up.
You,
and we're putting it out there to the cultiverse and the universe that someone needs to scoop this up and get it on the, I don't know.
Hell yeah.
Major media feeds.
Hell yeah.
Keep it up, babe. You like what you hear? Please do give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. Every little bit helps us get this cult awareness content out there. Smash that subscribe button. You know what to do. So that was our Patreon bonus drop with Lucy Taylor from a while ago that we've unlocked this week for everybody. But if you join us on Patreon, again, you'll get early access to our bonuses and 4 episodes every month for just $5.
Come chill with us over on Patreon. Cool vibes, you know what I mean? Culty vibes, maybe? No.
Not culty at all. We'll be back soon with new episodes. And until then, don't join a frat or a sorority. It's just,
use that joke twice now.
That's okay. Repetition for emphasis. Take ballroom dance lessons or join the marching band or an a cappella group. Although those things can also get culty too. Although we've never heard of a culty marching band. Actually, that's not true. I have. Somebody reported that from the West Coast in Portland. Maybe coming soon.
Portland.
A cappella?
That's kind of the pot
Super
calling
culty.
the kettle black.
Fuck, every group is culty. Anyway, just don't pledge or rush or whatever the hell it's called. Let us know what you think over on Instagram and see you next week. Bye.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We're heading over to patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty now to discuss this episode. In the meantime, dear listener, please remember, this podcast is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for real medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. For cult recovery resources and to learn more about seeking safely in this culty world, check out alittlebitculty.com/culty resources and don't miss Sarah's TED Talk called How Cult Literate Are You? Great stuff.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound and our co-creator and show chaplain / bodyguard, Jess Tardy. And our theme song, Cultivated, is by John Bryant.